In episode number 351 of the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, we cover DC Comics ending its line of Vertigo titles.
We also have the latest Pokemon Direct and what kind of extra features they now have in Pokemon Sword and Shield.
And the moment you have all been waiting for, we have our review for Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
All of this and so much more on today's episode.
Hello and welcome to the Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week, ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am, as always, your almighty Emperor Papa Kelli.
And I am Lass Daniel today.
Where's your skirt or your kilt or something?
Can a man be a lass?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
It's 2019. It's 2019. You can be whatever you want to be. That reminds me, I'm getting off topic already. At work today, I really had to pee, and there was somebody in the women's restroom, so I just went in the men's. Like, they're just one thing, and you lock them, right? Mm. And so I went. We do it all the time, right? You just gotta go. And I came out, and some guy's like, "You're not a man." Like, he was all offended. I wanted to be like, "You don't know. You don't know me, sir."
I identify as this for the next 5 minutes.
Just so I can use your stinky bathroom. But for those of you joining us for the first time, the way we format the show is first we're going to start out with some news, going over all those things I mentioned at the very beginning, not talking about bathroom habits. And then we have our Patreon shout-outs, our comic book, and our movie highlight this week as a double action-packed, and we follow up with our Brocat block. That's what's happening with Daniel and I this week.
So starting off with a director that we do wish would have returned to the X-Men universe. Unfortunately, that did not happen. But through an interview with Coming Soon, X-Men First Class director Matthew Vaughn revealed his original plans for his sequel to the film.
We have a quote here from him, quote, "That's one of the reasons I didn't continue, because they didn't listen to me. My plan was First Class. Then the second film was new young Wolverine in the 70s to continue those characters. My vision of the X-Men. So you'd really get to know all of them. And my finale was going to be Days of Future Past," end quote.
He also continued by expanding on his initial casting plan for young Wolverine by saying, quote, "When I finished the Days of Future Past script, with it ready to go, I looked at it and said, I really think it would be fun to cast Tom Hardy or someone as the young Wolverine and then bring it all together in the end. Fox read Days of Future Past and went, oh, this is too good. We're doing it now," end quote.
They're children. Right now. Can you imagine Tom Hardy as Wolverine?
I can imagine Tom Hardy as anyone. He's got the height, though.
Could he be
He's
Lass
a little guy.
Hardy? Could you imagine him as Lass Hardy?
I think it's interesting that he wanted to initially completely recast Wolverine. Mm-hmm. It doesn't answer how that first cameo by Hugh Jackman in First Class would have worked out. Maybe they would have deleted it if he would have gotten his plans as he wanted for the sequel. But if you remember, he does say, "Fuck yourselves, go fuck yourselves," when they come into the bar, mm-hmm. and it's still Hugh Jackman. You couldn't then do a sequel that's Tom Hardy as that particular Wolverine, unless it's like it's just a recasting.
But wasn't there something weird with Days of Future Past where, were they really their future selves, or was it a different universe?
Right, so Days of Future Past was the X-Men universe that we're from, the first mm-hmm. one, that had all of the older actors in it. And then it also had the X-Men First Class actors, and what it did is it served as a way to have both universes. So you would have an ending or resolution to the old universe, and then saying, here's the continued new universe with the X-Men First Class cast of characters.
So potentially they could have found a way to make it work. Even though Wolverine was in this universe, he was also technically in the other universe too.
Yeah, the only thing is, would that have been Hugh Jackman in the old universe and then Tom Hardy cast as the Wolverine in this particular universe? They could have gone a number of different directions. Mm-hmm. And as well as First Class was received and is still received and looked at as one of the best X-Men movies, it's kind of like you trusted whatever Vaughn had in the works.
You let him do what he wanted to do.
It's just unfortunate that Fox wanted to jump ahead a little bit and go straight into his finale of this universe, which it sounds like would have been his end-all be-all for both of the X-Men worlds.
It would have been, I mean, as always, right, as we see all the time, it would have been great to see his vision completed, to see how that would have worked out, because we probably would have gotten something fantastic. And it's unfortunate that because they wouldn't let him do what he wants, he stepped away.
So at one point, we almost had Tom Hardy as the new Wolverine, the young Wolverine. Well, we've got more casting news, this time things that are actually confirmed, that are happening. And this is according to Deadline. Warner Brothers and Robert Pattinson have reached a 3-film contract agreement, starting with Matt Reeves' The Batman film.
We talked about this a little last week. I've seen some people upset, but now that it's official, nobody's saying anything. They're just like, nah, whatever. Except I have seen memes where it's a goblet of fire, and they're like, the next Batman is Cedric Diggory. And he's like, ah.
That's really cool. One thing I did see about this news story about the 3 films is people have immediately jumped into the conclusion of, why don't we wait and see how if they can actually make a first Batman film before we even talk about sequels to 2 and 3. If you're saying this, you have a misunderstanding of how these contract options work. They lock them in for lesser money than, let's say they did a 1-film contract. The Batman blows up, makes millions of dollars. And then now they have to renegotiate with Robert to say, well, his guy is going to go, I'm going to do my fucking job and get him as much money as I possibly can. And then the agent is also going to obviously take a cut of that. But if they cut you into just a 3-film contract, this does not mean that the 3 movies are happening. This just means if we do a sequel, this is how much you're going to get paid for that sequel. And here's how much you're going to get paid for the 3rd one. And this is it. With then an option most likely to renegotiate if they decide to do a whole nother trilogy or a 4th or a 5th. At that point, they usually take it one by one, depending on how successful that trilogy is. But this does, once again, not mean that they are definitely confirming a trilogy of films. This could end in all right, this is going to be the next villain for the next movie. But as we saw with Green Lantern, that's never a guarantee.
No, this definitely means there's going to be 3.
And I'm sure that Ryan Reynolds was under contract for multiple films too.
Sure.
And when it doesn't work out, nothing happens. They just pay him for the 1 movie.
You know, it's a good thing Batman doesn't go into the sunlight because he's just going to sparkle.
I'm glad those jokes are at least mostly gone. They were never original. They weren't funny.
No, they were horrible. And it's like, yes, he's going to play the exact same character.
As always, we shall wait and see.
Yes.
There are rumors that he's already started the screen tests with a previous Batman costume, and we'll go from there. The other thing, too, is a lot of people are saying, whoa, he's too thin and it's not going to work.
Because no actor has ever bulked up for a role.
It's never happened, and this is also what they said about Gal Gadot for Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
And everyone loved her. So
she was great.
There you go.
Everyone just calm down.
And the same goes for people that are on the DC Beluga side of, look, I photoshopped him as Batman. He totally works. That's not necessarily how these things work either. You got to be able to play the fucking part. They can make you look like the fucking character.
Right.
That's all up to the costume designs. That's their job. But you got to actually play the role, and that's what they're mainly concerned with. And I think if they're smart, that's how they cast these movies.
I'm sure that is because they're in it to make money, right? To have the next best Batman. I don't know. I think he can do fine. I think he'll play a good Bruce Wayne too, and that's always the key. Like, can you play both? Because most Batmen can't play both.
Very difficult to do.
Yeah, but maybe we'll have middle-aged moms all about it again. So we'll see.
Heading on over to the comic book side of things, DC Comics has announced their latest DC Black Label comic title. We have Joker Harley Quinn, Criminal Insanity.
I am stoked.
Are you getting some Mad Love vibes out of this?
Yes, I'm so ready. So the solicitation reads, Harley Quinn and Joker's first meeting will be reimagined in this 9-issue series where Harleen is a forensic psychiatrist / profiler called in by Gotham City to help stop the Joker. It's got Mad Love written all over it.
I know I'm jumping to conclusions, but it sounds like they're already making her a more intelligent character than what Bruce Timm and Paul Dini did.
Of course.
Which is going away from her origin. It's not the exact character that we know or grew up with, but it's someone else's take on this. This is why it's a Black Label title, where it is something separate from the current continuity, at least the way they solicited this. That doesn't mean that all Black Label titles are out of continuity, as we're going to see with Batman Last Night on Earth. But it's kind of neat that they kind of have a little bit of freedom, not so much freedom that they can show penises apparently, but some freedom where they can kind of reimagine some of these origins.
I think that this is awesome. There's still so much hype around Harley Quinn and Joker and their relationship, and there's so much more that you can do with it. Mad Love is still one of my favorite stories, right? I think it's very well put together and a lot of fun. And, something that I could read over and over and over again. But it does have a lot of room to be reimagined, just like you pointed out, right? Making Harley a more intelligent character. So not just, I'm going to go work in Arkham and take care of the Joker just so that I look better, right? This is actually her being called upon because she's already made a name for herself.
One of the criticisms I've seen about this is not really from the Harley Quinn hardcore fans. No peep out of them, because it seems like they're happy to get more content. But instead, it's from other maybe quote-unquote readers who are saying, so you have a wide cast of characters in the DC universe, and you decide to use Harley and Joker yet again, more Batman characters? My response is, yes, I'm going to sell the fuck out of this.
Yeah.
What do you want, fucking The Atom? Black Label? Yeah, no, that'd be great. Yeah, and I would sell 2 copies of that shit.
Right.
This, I'm going to sell 70, 80, who knows how many copies. If there's a variant, which there will be, even more. The fan base will vote with their dollar. It's the same shit I'm seeing now, where their Deceased has come out, and they're blaming Dan DiDio and DC by going, they're focusing on the villains right now with You're the Villain. They're focusing on Deceased, which is zombified superheroes. Enough with the dark themes. I'm sitting here as a retailer going, more. I'm selling the fuck out of this. Readers are loving this shit. Your fucking voice is nothing. Make the sales dictate that then. If I'm going to keep selling Deceased, that's the fan base saying, no, we like the dark themes. Keep the stories coming. And once again, because it's a light or a dark theme, it doesn't guarantee that the story's good or bad. The reason why Deceased is doing well is because it's a really neat idea. It's DC zombies, right? Just like Marvel Zombies was several years ago. We're now getting down on the DC Universe side. The covers are amazing. They've got prime talent on this work. There's a lot of pieces at work. It's not just the tone.
I agree with that 100%. And I mean, it all goes back to people voting with their dollar, right? Exactly like you said, you're always going to sell Joker and Harley forever. And it's not just while this run is out. It will be the trade comes out and you can sell that forever. Yeah. I don't know. People need to calm down.
There's a reason why DC's trades and hardcovers are forever more sellable than any of the other publishers currently.
No, they just don't know what they're doing.
Why is The Court of Owls and The Killing Joke still some of my top 10 selling trades and hardcovers
because they're
every
so
month?
Good. They're so good.
But they're so dark. Like, shouldn't they? That's so ridiculous. So here's the talent behind Joker, Harley, Criminal Insanity. It's written by Kami Garcia, who previously did Beautiful Creatures, which is a graphic novel, with art by Mike Mayhew, who worked on 2003's Mystique, and art also by Miko Swayan, who worked on Injustice, Gods Among Us. That comic book still does really well. The trades and hardcovers.
It's a great premise. I just didn't know that it sold that well.
People may need to correct me, but it's gotta be one of like the top 5 best-selling video game comic books out there.
Huh. That's pretty cool.
Joker and Harley Criminal Insanity is set to release October 2nd.
This is an exciting title that's going to come out of the Black Label. We're already a fan of Black Label, but they're about to get even bigger. Yeah, something else might be getting smaller too, but they're about to get bigger. So Bleeding Cool has broken the story that DC Comics is ending its line of Vertigo issues and instead is planning a relaunch for summer 2019, moving some of those over to their Black Label.
So according to Bleeding Cool's insider sources, some of the titles are being moved over to DC Black Label and others are simply being canceled and not coming out. So initially they did plan a relaunch for Vertigo, but it's instead going to be merged with what they think is going to move and sell with their more successful line in spite of all the controversy, which is DC Black Label.
As always, sales are an indicator for cuts like this, right? But it's also reported that recent controversy over the bat penis, I don't know why we're still talking about this, from Batman Damned #1 caused a company-wide chain of outlook in DC's mature titles.
That's the power of the bat penis.
Of the bat penis. Changing worlds, changing lives, getting people fired.
It really is. It's kind of insane how much it's affected the world.
Making men question their sexuality right there.
Apparently.
Saw a dark outline of a bat penis, and that was it.
I've seen a lot of tweets beg and plead to DC to not end the Vertigo line, but honestly, they don't sell well.
Right.
I'm sorry, but if you really cared about the Vertigo titles, you should have been buying those comic books. If you were buying recent titles over the last year, you have the right to complain because you were supporting it. Anyone else? Fuck off. You can say all you want, but you weren't out there at comic shops buying these comics. This is why they're going to go away. This is why they're going to instead focus on a different line of books that are working for them and that readers are enjoying.
And this doesn't mean that, at least my interpretation, right, that every single title is going away. It's just moving over to a different label, and potentially they have more exposure, right, on this label, because now it says DC, it's not just Vertigo. So how much more exposure are you going to get from that? Like, oh, this is a new DC book, right? It's a bigger name.
To be fair, they did change the name recently to DC Vertigo, but that's simply not enough.
Right.
The Black Label line took over completely. And again, a positive result of this is the Batman Damned penis.
I think that this is... And I don't know, right? I'm not personally affected, but I think that this could be a good move. It could help them bring out more and different titles. And, all these people saying, well, we want something different. Well, maybe you'll get that now and you'll have the opportunity to vote with your dollar again. Am I going to get a Lucifer comic? Can there be a Lucifer comic?
There's a Lucifer comic now.
What?
Yeah, you're not buying it.
Is it like the TV show?
No, it's not.
Then that's why I'm not buying it. You make it like the TV show and
it's classic Lucifer. It's true Lucifer.
Is he like solving crimes?
I'm not reading it.
Is he handsome?
He's blonde?
No.
Does he remind you of Constantine too much?
No, I don't know. Blonde guys. I'm just not about it.
The other thing, too, is the Young Animal line that had Doom Patrol as of 2 or 3 years ago is also going to be moving over to DC's Black Label. So that's where you're going to start seeing some of those characters show up in the future of DC's comics. But the last bit of DC news is pretty huge for people that are attending San Diego Comic-Con this year.
According to IGN, Warner Brothers is skipping San Diego's Hall H presentation this year. Not going.
I think even Marvel Studios wasn't there last year, so some of these companies are starting to drop off of San Diego Comic-Con.
Because Hall H is lame. I don't know. I don't know what Hall H is, but I'm guessing they're lame.
Hall H is where they would first show off the trailers, the footage. That's where they announced Batman v Superman, and they showed that clip of him turning on the bat signal and seeing Superman. And that's where they get the cast members at the hall and get them talking about these movies and the visions, and you have the slate of films that they're going to do over the next 5 or so years. But in the age of the internet, it's kind of more effective to do your own thing online, doing it through streaming, kind of like Nintendo does now. Instead of going to E3 fully and committing that as their presentation, they just do a live stream and show off their games there, where everyone can pull out the device in their pocket and immediately start watching as if they're at that particular presentation.
Right. That is a much easier way. I think it's easier to get everything out to everybody, right? And then you have more control over what gets watched, what gets leaked, right? Because I feel like, wasn't there an issue a while ago where it got leaked prior to Hall H?
Not only that, but the stuff that they would show off in Hall H was meant to be exclusive to the people that waited hours at the convention to watch this footage. And someone would inevitably be streaming or recording these things. So you had two issues here. You had the issue of now the people that waited that long it's not exclusive to them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, well, you got to see the news unfold live along with everyone else.
Right.
But two, you don't control the narrative anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas I think it was the Suicide Squad trailer that leaked through like a regular phone recording it, and then Warner Brothers had to then release the actual high definition trailer on YouTube, because instead people's first impression of these movies is this shaky cam, non-HD footage
recorded
of their
by
movie.
a weeb.
And that usually becomes the first impression for a lot of these viewers, which is negative to your product. And in this case, yeah, you can control the narrative instead and release everything as you want it to go, usually on Twitter.
That's very good insight. You know, Hall H, we're not coming either. Don't even ask
Canceling
us.
our plans.
We'll say no. We were going to be there. We were.
We were, yeah.
But now, no, because DC's out, we're out too. We're going to control our own narrative.
So because of this, director Patty Jenkins instead tweeted out an image of Wonder Woman's new costume in Wonder Woman 1984, kind of as a thing to say, here's something to hold you over until the movie comes out next year, June 5th, 2020.
Ooh, 1 year away.
Or until that first teaser trailer.
Yeah. So what were your thoughts on the costume?
I don't know if this is going to be one of several costumes that she's going to be wearing. Every time they do these superhero movies, it seems like they tweak the costumes a little bit to sell different merch, to sell different toys, wallpapers, phone cases, everything. This could also be a move to 2019 her a little bit, to have her more covered up and more, I guess, I don't know if it's like a empowering thing, like more modern look, not having her show off, so much skin or leg, which obviously is different from what they did in Justice League, where they had the traditional awesome costume. But this could also just be what she ends up wearing for that era when we actually see the reasoning for her changing into that more goddess-like, maybe inspired. It's got to be magic-based, right? It can't just be that she changes.
You know what it reminded me of is Big Barda's costume. So I wonder if it has something to do with Apocalypse.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a really good theory. I also saw that they kept kind of the Wonder Woman Falcon or the eagle on the chest, which you've seen in some of the iterations of the comic book costume. So I thought that was really neat. And you can see the lasso on her right-hand side, so she still has that. You can't see her boots or anything. People are saying that it's a super hyper colorful costume. I think that's just a reflection from everything around her.
All the colors around her, yeah.
And then a bunch of Marvel sheep
of course
are now saying that it's copying Thor Ragnarok.
Oh my God. Nobody's copying that movie.
And we're seeing, hopefully not, thank God, a fucking terrible goddamn movie. But I've seen those amazing tweets, and OmniJam first sent that over on Discord, and he's like, that first tweet of someone's been watching Thor Ragnarok is a garbage tweet, but all of the replies are gold, and it's people saying, the Marvel Studios didn't invent colors. They were putting up like all of these other films that have also been colorful throughout the last 100 years. It's like, get out of here, you fuckers. This has nothing to do with Thor Ragnarok.
Oh,
it's a fucking poster.
Oh, but it does. It has everything to do with Thor Ragnarok.
As an example of what they've done at Hall H in the past, last year's presentation included promotion for Shazam and Wonder Woman 1984, which I believe was originally set to release this year before it was pushed to next year. How much longer until we get our first look at Cheetah? Do you think it'll be in that teaser trailer that will probably show up in the Joker trailer?
Yeah.
Or before the Joker movie, I should say.
Yes. It's going to show up before the Joker movie's in October?
Yeah.
So that's where we're going to probably see the first teaser trailer. I don't know if we'll get a glimpse of Cheetah in that. I think we'll get a tease of Cheetah. So maybe like her walking past or Wonder Woman discovering her cheetah lair. I don't know. Wherever she is in the jungle. But I don't think we'll actually see Cheetah in that until we get the first full trailer.
For our final piece of news, we're going to land on over to the video game side with the latest Pokemon Direct from the Pokemon Company.
We got a 3-minute trailer of Pokemon Sword and Shield, which will release in November of this year.
The full Pokemon Direct was about a little under half an hour long, but they outlined all kinds of fun new features that they added, as they typically do in the Pokemon games. But one of the things that they've changed and focused on is that Sword and Shield are going to take a more traditional format similar to Red and Blue, as opposed to the more recent Sun and Moon, which was less about the gym leaders and more about these trials.
Oh, that's right. I do remember that. Where you like fought little battles, but it wasn't anything big. They also introduced a new dynamic mechanic where your Pokemon becomes huge.
Yeah.
Like giant. And can deal higher damage and fight other giant Pokemon.
They also implemented with this feature a little bit of that Pokemon Go mechanics and gameplay.
Yeah.
Where several of you can take down a Pokemon, as you do with the legendaries when they do those promotions in the app. But in this case, you and up to 4 friends can take down one of these dynamics Pokemon, and one of the 4 of you is allowed to turn into also an all-out giant Pokemon. So you got to kind of strategize with your friends. And I'm sure each of the Pokemon will have different abilities that will power up your team or make a certain Pokemon's attacks higher. Different combinations to try to take down almost like a dungeon-style World of Warcraft-ish, like very diet World of Warcraft, as they take down, in the example of the trailer, a giant Gyarados.
I'm sure that's where you'll really get to use those moves too that you never fucking used in the old games, like Helping Hand, right? What was that bullshit? Well, now it'll really come in handy when you and your 3 friends and your 1 giant Pokemon taking on this other guy. What were your thoughts of the trailer? Are you excited for this game?
I think what I like the most of it, the new mechanics are fun and great, and I'll end up getting used to them or forgetting them recently, because as we saw with like level X's or Mega Pokemon, you don't really see those come back. Instead, they try to build upon the formula and kind of go forward. So what I was most impressed with is the scope of the game. It feels like the largest Pokemon game yet. The simple change in camera angles makes all the difference in this. And obviously it's very conscious of the fact that you're playing on the Switch now. It's not only possible to play on your big screen at home, which is already a larger presentation than what you had with your 3DS, but now even on the Switch's screen, which is already like a cinema style little television, right? It's very wide. It's different than once again the 3DS, where they can use more of that screen space to show off the landscape. So I was getting Legend of Zelda vibes from the Sword and Shield trailer. You can see the wide fields. You can see the grass. You can see the graphics
Pokemon
are incredible.
just running around.
Pokemon going up against the Rhydon, walking through a sandstorm.
Yeah.
The fucking Gyarados out in the middle of a lake and all this, the Milotic. It's amazing the amount of space that you now have as a trainer to explore this brand new region. I think that's what I found most impressive. And did you notice that these new Pokemon they showcased looked more like natural traditional animals than what you've gotten in the past, which isn't a good or a bad thing, but it should appeal somewhat more to these Gen 1ers.
I agree. I did like the look of the new Pokemon, even the legendaries, right? Like they were just sweet doggos. And I was like, hey, little doggo, we could be friends. Like, why are you so cute? But watching this trailer, and it's cool, right? They've put a lot of cool things in it, but it made me so tired. I just don't think I have the energy to go through another Pokemon game. I think I'm like old now. Is that a sign of old age?
It's going to be tough beating this or even playing it. I didn't pre-order this. I don't expect to play this in the next 5 years.
No. I'm just like, I'm tired. They were showing me like all these battles and I was like, ugh, I can't, sir. Just let me run around and catch my Pokemon. I don't have time to take on more gym leaders. I'm just going to sit at home with my Pikachu and like play house.
I've already seen some of my favorite tweets are people are want to romance the champion that they show at the very end.
Yeah.
And also the professor's daughter, which is like
is that
the redhead or whatever, and they're saying artists do your thing.
Now let's see, I'm a redhead and she's a redhead and you kind of look like the champion. So it's like just us getting together.
We'll just cosplay as those characters.
Perfect. I'll just do my hair real weird and big. I don't have the energy for that either.
All these goals that are never going to happen.
Never going to happen. At the end of the day, I think the changes that they've made are smart. I think it's going to appeal to a lot of younger players, people who have time and energy to explore this giant world, because with each of these games, right? And I really saw it with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu. They're trying to make it feel very much like Pokemon in real life, right? You see the Pokemon running around just like you would if they were here next to us, just like you saw in Detective Pikachu, right? They run around. They're just part of you. And you really get to see that in this too, especially with the giant open world. So I think the changes are great. It's going to appeal to, bring a lot more people in, like you said, appeal to the Gen 1ers too. I don't know if I can handle this.
Which of the new Pokemon that were showcased was your favorite?
Oh, I don't know. The bunny is really kind of growing on me.
The Fire Bunny?
Yeah. He was pretty good. Like, he looks real scrappy.
Yeah, he really does. He's got like that sort of Band-Aid thing over his nose.
He's going to kick some ass. Like, I haven't seen what he turns into. Maybe that'll kill it for me.
My favorite is that like night crow thing. That raven.
Yeah. He was pretty cool.
That thing was awesome. And I don't know if they showcased the evolved form. There was one that had like a longer beak. And I don't know if it was just the same Pokemon, but at a different angle when it's actually flying around. But that thing was awesome. That's probably my favorite one. And I know a lot of people gravitated as well to the sheep.
Oh, the sheep with the Jewish sheep?
Is that what it was?
the little things hanging down from the side?
Has anyone photoshopped that yet?
You have the opportunity right now.
Maybe I will.
Jewish sheep. There was somebody like next to the Jewish sheep too that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was like a turtle dinosaur
that
thing.
guy. He was pretty cool.
Reminded me of Torterra.
Yes.
And also the water rock type turtle as well. That's underwater. It's not I forgot the name of it, but it was kind of like an amalgam between the two. Yeah.
The legendary turtle.
It's not a legendary.
Oh.
But it's like a little one, and then it evolves into the big one that has like the awesome defense of like, fucking being water and rock.
He's the fossil one, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I said legendary, because he's a fossil. It also reminded me of the fire guy, maybe. Isn't there a fire one that has a weird like beak mouth like that?
Yeah. There's a couple like different designs on there.
All the Pokemon turtles. That's what it reminds us of.
If you were able to see the Pokemon Direct, jump on into our Discord room. Link is in the description. Let us know what you thought of the trailer, or you can tweet at us on Twitter at ReasonsI'mBroke, at Kelli. That's Kelly with an I.
That is it for our news this week, but don't go away because there's still so much podcast left. We're going to jump into our Patreon shoutouts next, but we do also have that Godzilla review and a comic book review for you this week as well.
First Patreon shout out, our first thank you to our listeners who make this show possible by backing us on Patreon goes out to Brian on Twitter at BrianShaup1.
Brian tweeted, quote, "I had Sega Channel when I was 19 in Kentucky. It was great," end quote.
And this was a response to me saying, y'all were some rich kids. Are you familiar with Sega Channel?
I'm not familiar with Sega Channel.
It was basically a subscription service cable channel, and from there you can stream video games and all kinds of shit. Like, I think there was even slightly original programming, whereas there were trailers that played all the time. And I really wanted it as a kid because back then you didn't have G4. You didn't have a video game channel. You didn't have websites that you can just go to for your video game content. This was the Sega Channel, and I was a big Genesis kid. And I used to see the commercials and seeing the ads in comic books, like in the old Sonic the Hedgehog comic book. But it was expensive as fuck. I remember that I was like, shit, that's expensive. Even as a kid, I had no concept of money, really, compared to what my parents would pay in bills. But I was like, damn, that Sega Channel is a bitch.
How much was it?
I think it ended up being like $19 a month or $9 a month, something ridiculous for back then. It was expensive. But here I'm seeing that people like Brian Shaup and Treasure Hunting Sonic had Sega Channel as kids. It's like, goddamn, y'all were some fucking rich kids. If you had the Dreamcast even, I remember that shit was expensive when they first debuted it. And if you had one of those, you're a fucking rich kid.
So Sega Channel, I just Googled this, was $15 a month.
That's insane.
Plus a $25 activation fee.
Insane. And it's not even like you're getting TV shows that are originally produced with actors like fucking Kevin Spacey as you would get with Netflix. This was the Sega Channel. And yeah, it was a huge thing for its time. It didn't take off like they wanted it to, but it was expensive as fuck. This is why.
That's like $200 a year.
Brian and Treasure Hunting Sonic. Richie Riches.
Our next shout out goes out to Kat, whose Instagram is @CatShaw.
Kat put together an improvisation desk for her desktop computer made up of comic book short boxes.
Might as well. It's cheaper than a real desk.
They're sturdy too. They'll protect your comics and they'll support your computer life.
Our next shout out goes out to Matt, whose Twitter handle is @MrForklift.
Matt retweeted an image of astronaut Mike Massimo's custom commemorative set from the Lego company celebrating the first ever tweet from space. Had a little plaque with his tweet on there, a little Lego plaque, a little Lego, his name on there, a little Lego astronaut, the ship. It's a really nice little thing, and obviously it was meant to be shared on Twitter, and it was, and it's now on a fucking podcast being shared to all of you. So that's kind of neat, the first tweet from space. Like, I know it's like, hey, come on, guys. It's like, but they've done a lot in space. Like, obviously there was eventually going to be a first tweet in space.
There has to be.
And I think it's neat that the Lego company reached out and did this whole custom thing for it.
Lego's pretty cool. They have a lot of really awesome things, commemorative things, just like that you can get and keep track of all these things. And how cool to be like, yeah, I'm a Lego. Like, I want to be a Lego.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
It's amazing.
Final shout out this week goes out to Jared on Twitter @SpoonSandwich. He also has a YouTube channel, youtube.com/Jared Monroe.
Jared tweeted, quote, "If you're looking to replace or upgrade your headphone cushions, just got these @Wicked Cushion ear cups. Feel awesome," end quote.
It's a nice headset too. Nice keyboard. He has like a little light up keyboard, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
And I'm sure that works out really great for his streams as well. You got to have nice headphones because especially if you're wearing them for hours on end, they can give you a headache.
You got to keep your ears cushy.
You also got to have a smaller head because I know when I wear the Sony ones that are amazing, they've got surround sound and everything, but they stretch when I put them on my giant head. So they're kind of compressing inward because they're like, we're trying to hold together our mass against this giant fucking head. And so I get that headache eventually of all that pressure around my ears. So it is important to get that cushion, but it's also important to have big enough headphones. They need to make headphones for people my size.
Giant heads.
Because what's poor Leo going to do in the future?
I don't
He's screwed.
know. He is. I tried to put like a 24-month hat on him. Too small.
Rips. So thank you so much, Kat, Matt, Jared, and Brian for your Patreon support. If you too would like your shout out every single month, head on over to patreon.com/thereasonsimBroke for just $1 a month. That's 25 cents an episode, everyone. You get your shout out. I will stalk you on Twitter or Instagram, and that's content for the show.
But if you're saying, guys, I can't help you monetarily, but I would like to help you in other ways, head on over to Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review. 5 stars only, please.
Anything less than that need not apply. Huge thanks as well to Jose over at kingdomtshirt.com for the help with our decals at the $5 reward tier. Huge thanks, Jose. Massive help.
And of course, always, guys, the best thing you can do for us is just let your friends know about us. Spread the word. Say, hey, I listened to this pretty cool podcast, and you might like it too.
You're looking forward to Wonder Woman 1984? Listen to the podcast. Here, thereasonsimbroke.com.
You liked Godzilla? We got this great review this week. Here you go.
Steal their iPhones. Just subscribe.
Just
do
subscribe.
It. Nice little surprise
Take
for their phone.
Stuff.
Absolutely.
That's the surprise they're going to leave on a phone.
Yes.
Our podcast.
Let's head on over into our comic book review for this week, our comic book highlight.
This week we have Batman Last Night on Earth. This is written by Scott Snyder with art by Greg Capullo, and the colorist is FCO Placencia.
So this is the second released DC Black Label comic book. It was supposed to be the other history of the DC universe that they solicited starring Black Lightning. It ran into some legal troubles, plus with the Bat Penis, it changed the whole lineup anyway. But instead, we've got Batman Last Night on Earth, which was originally supposed to be the final part to All-Star Batman. Do you remember that series from Scott Snyder? Had different artists, and they swapped out the artist based on the villain that it would focus on for that particular miniseries. So instead of finishing up All-Star Batman, and I'm assuming it's because the sales dipped, they saved this until now when Greg Capullo could work on it and when they could release it as a Black Label title. And it worked out because I sold out of both the main cover and the variant, and I had ordered high on it. This is the basic, it is a in-continuity comic book. A lot of people were confused about it because it is a Black Label book, but this does show that it doesn't have to be an out-of-continuity comic to be a Black Label comic. And this is where they're saying, Scott Snyder saying that his version, his run of Batman, is far off in the future with this comic. If you take the New 52 Batman with the Court of Owls, the death of the family, all of that stuff, if they had continued it into the far future, that is this story. It's not if they would have. This is that far story. So it jumps straight into that, and with the artwork by Greg Capullo, this is basically the New 52 Batman. And I think that break from Batman really benefited both Scott and Greg, because they got to really refine this story so that it did not feel like jumbled up as it was in Justice League, which is very hard to do a team-up book anyway, but this was a focused story about Batman. It goes back into that tech that he had of, when I die, there's this 32-year-old clone of me that's going to be around so that Gotham always has not just the Batman, but me, the Batman.
Like you said, it's very well put together, right? This is just the first part. Did they say how many issues it's going to be?
3 issues. It releases every other month.
Okay. So 3 issues. It is a lot more pages than you get in a normal book, of course. And it's broken up into several parts to take you throughout the story. But it opens with the concept that's been floating around for forever of what if Batman wakes up and he's just been crazy this whole time and Alfred's been helping him, right? So you get to explore that a little bit in the beginning to have those oh shit moments, right? Before we carry on with this pretty much post-apocalyptic story.
Yeah, that's what it ends up turning into, because there's that trick of, oh, that's what that story is going to be. But then the story unfolds and it ends up being a very heartfelt moment of Alfred going, Master Bruce, I was just trying to give you what you wanted in this illusion around you. But in reality, this is a post-apocalyptic world and you can't do anything about it. So I was trying to keep you in that world until I died, until you died. Because I love you. And that's it. Like, you can just be Batman. Yes, it's an illusion, but it's comforting to him. And when he reveals all of this to Batman and he tells him, can you just be happy? Can you just be what I wanted you to be? And Batman says, I can't. I have to try to save the world. And Alfred says, I know you would say that, but he kind of says his goodbye to him. Yeah. And there's like a very strong father-son moment between the two characters.
Yeah, Alfred is pretty much like, I'm too tired, right? He's so old now, he can't continue on with it. I'm getting emotional because it was so sweet, right? But in the end, he says, just hold me for a second. Just be the boy that I love.
Yes.
And he's spent all these years, and even though this is a clone of Batman, right? Even though the original boy that he loved was taken away from him, he still loves this Batman as much as he did the other one. Oh my God, Alfred. Oh, I'm so sad. You got to continue for me.
The corruption continues, though, because we're seeing that the Green Lantern Corps is no more. Anyone can pretty much wield the fucking lantern rings. And the world went insane in a way due to Lex Luthor. I was a little bit confused as to how that happened.
I think it's kind of touching on our world today too, though, right? Where the environment is slowly getting ruined and there's corruption with people and greed, and Lex Luthor just kind of fed into that, right? Of, oh, you should all just go take what you want yourselves. That's what I'm doing. And then people just kind of snapped. You had a mob mentality and they literally, Batman was trying to save the world, let people into the Hall of Justice, and they literally ripped them apart.
Yeah, it's pretty screwed up, and this is why this is not, and they say it in the book, you're not really him, and they're referring to Batman, but it's a clone of Batman, has his memories, has his training.
Except for how he died, but yes.
Except for how he died, so it's Batman.
Yeah.
So Batman's going to save the world. The Joker is somehow alive in that jar, that it's a severed head of the Joker that's been in that area for years, it seems like 10 years. and it can talk to Bruce. And I don't know if that's Bruce just seeing the Joker or he needs a Joker to continue or to function as Batman. There's a number of ways that can go into that, but it's fun seeing this journey of these two characters go into this world that is fucked up with the catch up of a future Wonder Woman who's also lost a lot of hope, and they're just trying to retreat to an area that's safe, even if it means working with Hades himself. There's a lot in here that's very hopeless, but Batman is going to be that hope to this last two issues.
Of course he is, because Batman's awesome.
If you were ever subscribed or ever read any of Batman New 52 and you enjoyed it, this is a must read, because this is the final part where Greg and Scott are going to team up on Batman. So if you are at all a fan of that team up, including FCO Placencia, this is a collection that has to go with your comic books. You file this under New 52 Batman because it is a continuation of all of that. When it's all done, if you want to buy the trade, you're gonna put that next to your final volume of Batman New 52 because that's where this all fits. And so far, the quality of story, obviously the artwork, is on par with everything that they did. Starting with 2011's New 52.
100%. This is starting off, right, a very well-rounded story. You can read this. There wasn't really one point where I felt really confused or that I missed out on something or that I needed to continue to read for something to make sense. The story is going to continue to unfold. It's going to be a great, fantastic story of Batman bringing back hope to the world. Like he brings hope to my life every day.
That's right. It'll be tough waiting those 2 months per issue, but obviously it'll be worth the wait. And if you really wanted to, you can just wait till all 3 issues come out and then read them all in one sitting.
Or you can buy them all now and then reread them all in one sitting.
That too. That's how a lot of people are doing it with Doomsday Clock.
But that is it for our comic book highlight this week. Now we can move into the moment you have all been waiting for, at least I have been waiting for, because I'm excited to talk about this movie. We have our review of Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
So going through the credits first of Godzilla, the people that make the movies possible, something like this, the scope of this, it is directed by Michael Dougherty, who previously worked on Krampus. And it's written by Michael Dougherty as well, Zach Shields, who worked on Coraggio, and Max Borenstein, who also worked on Godzilla 2014.
It stars Kyle Chandler from Argo, Vera Farmiga. Did I pronounce that?
I think it's Farmiga.
Okay. Vera Farmiga from Up in the Air, Millie Bobby Brown from Stranger Things, and Ken Watanabe from Inception.
A couple of stats here for how Godzilla King of the Monsters is performing so far. As of June 4th, the movie grossed $57.1 million in the US and Canada, $130 million in other territories for a worldwide taking of $187.1 million against a budget estimated to fall between $170 to $200 million after you account for advertising.
This is less than Godzilla 2014 made in its opening weekend, so overall it's performing under expectations. I still don't think it's a flop. It's making its money.
They're calling it a flop.
It'll make its money. Calm down.
So the one thing I will take about this is if Godzilla versus King Kong weren't already, wrapped up and finished as far as filming, we wouldn't have gotten King Kong versus Godzilla.
Probably not.
But since that is coming out next year and it's already well underway, if that doesn't perform amazingly, we're not going to get a Godzilla 4 or a Monsterverse 4.
I mean, not in this run. We will get a Godzilla again sometime in our lifetime. But correct, if Godzilla King Kong doesn't do well, it'll probably be put on hold for a little while.
So before we jump straight into this review, we do want to warn you, it is going to be a spoiler review of Godzilla King of the Monsters. Whether or not giant monsters fighting and the great moments matters to you as far as spoiling it. But if you haven't seen it and you'd like it to not be spoiled and you want to enjoy it on the big screen, we will see you next week if you decide to tune in to another episode instead. Or go ahead and pause, go watch the movie, save the episode on your phone, and then come back to this timestamp. And or you can fast forward 20 minutes or so to the broke-up block. But from here on out, we are going to go into the plot details, which is the story, the acting, the directing, and special effects. I think we did good by not rating last time, so we're just going to give our thoughts, and you can kind of formulate your overall impressions on how we felt about this particular movie and whether or not we recommend or not recommend watching it.
So first with the plot, typical Godzilla movie, right? Humans are bad, monsters are bad, Godzilla saves the day.
Did you get some Batman v Superman vibes from the story? With the catalyst being that the destruction in Godzilla 2014 created this villain, which is played by Vera, of them losing their child, their son, because of these buildings that are destroyed. They're blaming, she's blaming Godzilla. They all blamed Godzilla, but she went even further by working with Monarch to overthrow Monarch's plans and instead worked with this eco-terrorist group, which you pointed out. You're like, he's just Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, he was.
Who's trying to bring back the Earth to its natural state before humans polluted it and ruined it. And they're seeing these monsters as a sign of humans need to go. We're the illness of this Earth. And the kaiju...
The infection is what she calls them.
And the kaiju is that cure to the infection, keeping it from spreading.
I didn't get those vibes, but now that you mention it, I can see where you would get that from.
And their solution is to awaken more of these giant monsters to cause more destruction on Earth, to bring down the population of humans, and to once again make it a natural Earth so that it can heal.
Well, she points out too that anywhere the monsters go, because of the radiation that they put off, like plants start going like crazy. So they show clips of that. She had clips ready to go, right? When she's explaining.
Presentations, yeah.
But of whatever city the last one took place in, right? Where Godzilla was there and the Motu or whatever, the Matanuis, whatever. How that city is just overrun with plants, right? And it's only been, 5 years? But now it's this thriving forest, right? So her whole thing is we're destroying our Earth. We need to set these guys free, live with them, and bring our Earth back to balance again.
Almost what we got in the Netflix Godzilla, where in that far future, the world not only healed, but evolved. So the plants were like crazy strong to adapt for giant fucking Godzilla just walking around and shit. And in that, there was also that tribe that learned to live with Godzilla and the rest of the monsters, and it was more of a natural lifestyle than what the humans had done as far as going into space and having nano robots and nano machines. So that's what the future and these terrorists want. And the way that they awaken these monsters is by using this Orca technology, which uses a frequency that is human as well as like an alpha type of signal that then awakens these monsters, or at least attracts them. It can stop them from attacking. It's pretty amazing how much control they got out of this particular device that seemed to have originally been made to keep something like what happened in 2014's Godzilla from happening again.
So what they were really using it for is for orcas. When it was originally developed, they were using it with the whales, and they determined that with any creature that hunts in a pack, they have one alpha that they listen to. So they created an alpha signal, which was, I think, based off Godzilla and humans. Where they could, like you said, awaken the monsters. The monsters listen to the voice of the alpha, as we see further in the movie, right? When Monster Zero starts going crazy and making them go nuts. Or Godzilla comes along and is like, nah, bitches. And then they all calm down. So that's primarily what they use throughout the movie.
It's a neat way to give an explanation as to how these monsters are showing up, or why they're coming out, or how they can get them to essentially clash and fight, which is what we want to see. The one bit I was confused on is why these monsters were dormant throughout all of these years, why Monster Zero was even frozen. How did these things happen? And did the Mutos awaken Godzilla originally, or what was actually causing all of this to start up from the beginning? And yeah, I know they said that human pollution and all of the effect we've had on Earth caused the Mutos to come out, which caused Godzilla to come out, which then caused everything else. But I still want to know, how's Monster Zero frozen? Why is Rodan sleeping in Mexico? Why is Mothra an egg that never hatched? Like, there's a lot of little things that I'm like, well, why were they all asleep at the same time?
I guess, but I feel like we don't really need an explanation about that. Like, do you feel like it really would have contributed to the movie if they're like, Monster Zero was flying over the North Pole?
I gotta knock the story.
in his little Stormy, and then the Ice Age happened all of a sudden, and now Monster Zero's frozen. Or Godzilla knocked him out and he fell into the water and then got frozen.
That's all I needed.
maybe he sunk the Titanic too. I don't know. Let's just
Too soon, Palpa Kelly. Too soon. When we first get that Monster Zero awakening, and then they're fighting. How did you? That was your monster. That's the one that's your favorite. How did you feel seeing Monster Zero for the first time, waking up, and then fucking Godzilla, who sees that signal? Is he attracted by to Monster Zero, or do they let off that No, they let off the signal to awaken Monster Zero. They set off the charges, which also attracts Godzilla, who's been doing these patterns around the Earth, essentially patrolling his territory. And now that this other alpha is awakened now, he has to go defeat it. He has to go challenge it.
Yeah, well, they do. Going back a little bit, they show this really cool moment, right? Where they're in this underwater base where they've been tracking Godzilla because they can see him there. And suddenly Godzilla's real close. And they're like, oh, fuck, what's going on? And he's just glowing, right? And they determine that it's like a warning signal, right? Because Godzilla knows that this is happening. So Godzilla must have heard the alpha call when they were taming Mothra. And he knows something's going down. But anyway, going back, right? Godzilla goes there. He's like, nah, Monster Zero's coming back. I gotta stop this bitch. And so he goes all the way, uses underwater caverns that we got to hear about 47 times to go to the North Pole. And you get that moment that you saw in the trailer, right? Where it's the two of them facing off, all this snow, and Monster Zero's just ginormous.
Wasn't it Antarctica? South Pole?
Whatever.
You're like, what's the same shit?
Some place with snow, Dan. There was
Greenland.
a lot of snow. Okay, cool.
Chicago?
Wherever. But yeah, you get that moment where they face off and you're like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? And then the humans ruin it. Getting thrown against stuff and running.
The fucking main guy, the dad, was indestructible. He was like a super soldier.
Yeah, it was crazy. But the one part that was so cool to me too is Monster Zero like shoots his lightning rays, right? Disintegrates people. Like they're gone. There's not even a body to find. Disintegrated.
And that first fight between the two, Monster Zero takes flight, goes, I'm gonna hold off on
BRB, Godzilla.
And then they have that fight in the ocean. Godzilla's fucking ass comes out of nowhere.
Ripping off the head.
And this is when they first awakened Rodan, right? And they lead it into the storm, which is where Monster Zero was going. And those two clash for a second. Monster Zero establishes dominance over Rodan. Okay, that's the alpha. Rodan's going to follow Monster Zero like the beach hand he is. My second least favorite character is Rodan. And the fact that he came from Mexico, I am going to say we don't claim him as a Mexican American. So let's not go there with these tweets. People are saying like it's the first major Mexican character in Godzilla films.
He was just sleeping there. It doesn't mean he's Mexican.
Yeah, he was so evil that I'm going to say he was definitely not Mexican. And he killed a ton of Mexicans.
He
Clearly
did.
not
a
Mexican.
whole bunch.
So there's when they are in the ocean and then Godzilla and Monster Zero fight, that was the end, right? Godzilla was beating the shit out of Monster Zero, winning the fight, and they used the oxygen destroyer bomb, which I believe it's the same one they used in the original Godzilla film, the old first one. And that's how they destroyed Godzilla, where it disintegrated him and there was just a skeleton left. And if that was that throwback, amazing. As like a fan, that's a really cool way to still use those old devices, bring them into this American lore of this Godzilla film. But then it ends up hurting Godzilla more than Monster Zero, and we find out why is because later on, it's clear that King Ghidorah can just regenerate like a fucking asshole, like the alien he is.
Yes. So beyond that, they discover that Monster Zero is from space, right? They go through all this lore, and they discover that ancient people say Monster Zero came down in a fiery ball from space, which again is really cool. Yeah, because he was an alien. In the older movies, when we saw him, they came and they picked up Godzilla and took him to space to fight this guy. And then you found out they were evil aliens. I I remember.
It's the character that does not belong on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fucking up all of this cycle, all of these monsters.
Right.
Because it's not something that should ever be here.
Because it's trying to destroy Earth. It's not trying to bring balance.
It's trying to change it to what it's used to, I guess.
Right.
Like the World Engine in Man of Steel.
Okay. So that's why he's flying around causing these huge, like, thunderstorms. He's just going around as a storm because, again, he's not supposed to be there. So now Godzilla is dead. The end.
And that's what you wanted. You wanted Monster Zero to win.
No. Me? No.
Although, I guess it was the humans that really won, right? What I thought was amazing, and this is where we get that first hint, and I think it's one of my favorite part. My favorite part of the story itself is that Mothra hatches. You see that...
And beautiful.
Gorgeous effects.
Beautiful.
All the monster effects, for the most part, are amazing.
We're not there yet. We're talking about the story.
Yeah, all right, fine. We'll get there. So Mothra comes out into the ocean, flies off, and they're like, oh, it must be good because it's a beautiful kaiju. So it runs out, it flies off, and it goes to the spot where Godzilla is healing or sleeping. And they're hoping that it's alive, right? And it barely is. But Mothra, that's where they establish that Mothra and Godzilla are a thing. They're a couple.
No, they're a symbiotic relationship.
Did you not see later on how Godzilla turned to look? We'll get there too. But that's what this is a romance story. There's your love story. There's a love story.
There wasn't a romance.
You want love stories in movies and you got one here.
You know who the love story is?
Don't say Monster Zero and Godzilla.
No, Godzilla and that Asian man. That was
Ken
your love
Watanabe?
story. Yes. That's your love story.
He might have been in love with Godzilla.
He was definitely in love with Godzilla.
That's how they revive him, though. So he's been in this, what I guess was Atlantis, or maybe a prehistoric human race that did worship Godzilla, because you did see those paintings.
First, they go through their undersea cavern.
Yeah, to the center of the earth or wherever the hell that is.
Whatever.
And that's where Godzilla is healing and recharging, but it could be years. So by the time he's ready to fight Monster Zero again, Monster Zero will have fucked up the whole world and humanity would have been mostly gone.
But the big thing is Godzilla's in this, like, super radiation place. Like, center of the earth, super hot and lots of radiation. But yes, could take him a long time.
And to revive him, they set off a bomb that they believe is what created someone like Godzilla to recharge him.
Nuclear bomb.
And the only one who can go there and take it is Ken Watanabe.
Well, he's not the only one, right? But their submarines messed up from going through the undersea cavern. They mentioned this cavern like 47 times. And I'm like, okay, white-haired man, I get it. I don't even know his name.
He wasn't even my least favorite. My least favorite is the little fucking assistant. The fucking guy who's like, I know where that is. And he
wasn't even an assistant. Like, he was somebody major. He was somebody major in
Fuck
Monarch.
That guy.
But anyway, yeah, I didn't like that guy either. So... yes, but their systems are damaged, so they can't launch this nuclear missile. So somebody's got to go in and manually set it off. And they're going to either die from nuclear poisoning or die from it being too hot or just die because the bomb's going to go off. And so he goes. And my heart was in my throat.
I didn't feel anything during that scene. I was like, wake him up and go, have him go fucking fight again.
No. So he goes, he leaves his journal, right? With all the answers to all life's questions. And he goes and he sets this thing for like a minute, right? And he's there and he goes up to Godzilla and he places his hand on his nose and says, goodbye, my friend. And Godzilla looks at him and they have a moment. And then, and there's just silence, as there should have been. Just silence.
You wanted him to be alive still.
Yeah, I wanted Godzilla to, like, put him in his mouth at the last second and, like, carefully carry him. And even in the end, when Godzilla shows back up and launches his blue fire into the air, I still expected him to open his mouth and, like, he would come out.
Like he's hanging off the teeth, like, hey everyone,
guys.
We've done it.
Now let him fight.
Yeah, he comes out. Mothra's happy. Everyone's happy. He's supercharged. Ken Watanabe's dead. And he's going to go off to fight Monster Zero in Boston. You notice we barely talked about the humans. The story on the humans was the weakest portion.
Definitely.
Not as interesting. And I get that they were trying to give us that hook with the beginning with the villain and the family. And they keep going back to this kid dying. And that's great. That's where they should have gone. But we are here for the monster fights, right? And then if they had given us an amazing human story as well as these great fights, this could have been the best Godzilla movie out there.
Right.
But because it did fall short on that human aspect and the overall plot on that bit of it, which was, I think, stronger than Godzilla 2014's, but Godzilla 2014 was technically, on a technical standpoint, a better movie.
the thing about the humans, though, is he didn't make any of them likable. I really didn't, you're trying to do this whole, like, grieving parent thing, right? Of, oh, well, she's trying to do this because she thinks it's what's right to pay homage to the child that they lost. But then you're supposed to relate to the dad, right? Who's showing back up to save the day, who just pieced out after they lost their kid. And I can't imagine that pain, right? But he had another kid. Mm-hmm. And to say, I'm going to drink myself into oblivion and then to make up for it, piece out of my daughter's life, you can't do that either. So I really didn't like him. Like, he could have died too. And that would have been fine.
Yeah, there weren't any really relatable characters to this. Even Ken Watanabe, he was very different. He was way different than he was in 2014.
But I still liked him the most.
That's not saying much.
He was. You know what was cool about the humans that they did nod to is the one scientist. She was a twin. Mm-hmm. So they had one scientist with Mothra, who was the one twin, and then the other one. And they're like, yeah, we're third in line with Monarch. And then you see, like, all these twins, just like the ones that woke up Mothra. I'm sorry, continue.
I thought we were going to get singing. When I saw the twin, I'm like, oh, are we going to get some kind of something?
No, but she does mention, she's listening to Mothra, and she's like, it sounds like a song.
Oh, that's cool.
So she does have that moment of where you can connect it back to that.
And they did play the Mothra song a little bit. They played the classic, both Godzilla songs. They merged that into one. So that was really neat to hear in this movie. It really plays on nostalgia and it works.
I did like that with Monster Zero. They kind of had his original noise, but still made him sound more organic.
You're talking about the cry itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I still wanted that kind of shrieking, but we didn't get it.
That one?
Yeah, but we didn't get any hint of that.
Yeah, you did.
At all. I didn't hear it.
Oh, I heard it. It was there, but again, they made it sound more organic.
Because I heard more like a roar, like just a generic roar. And I was like,
if you listened, you saw that. I was listening for it, so I was ready. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and did Mothra have it did have that long cry like normal, yeah. So that, maybe I'll have to find like a clip of the Ghidorah cries in this to see where I can kind of catch it. So when they have that final battle though, Rodan's fucking ass, he's the fucking Beachan henchman, essentially.
He was stupid.
When Godzilla and Monster Zero, once again, Godzilla kicks Monster Zero's ass, eventually pins down King Ghidorah, and it's Mothra's job to deliver the final blow. But goddamn Rodan comes out of nowhere, starts fighting Mothra, interrupts the whole fucking thing. Monster Zero then gets the upper hand on Godzilla, kicks his fucking ass. Mothra beats the shit out of Rodan, which is amazing. But she's now weak due to this fight with Rodan. Right. And she has to try to take on King Ghidorah by herself. But this is my favorite scene of this, is where Godzilla's on the ground. He's defeated for all intents and purposes. He lost.
He's done, yeah.
Monster Zero's still up and about, and he's ready to fucking do shit. And Godzilla looks over his shoulder and sees Mothra weakened, crawling over him.
His friend.
And King Ghidorah runs up to fucking Godzilla to kill him, to finish him off, and Mothra spreads her wings over Godzilla, which is a very animalistic behavior of like protecting your significant other or your young or whatever, the thing
or
you love.
Or your friends.
And she defends Godzilla, wants him to live, goes after fucking Monster Zero. I wanted a little bit of a fight between the two. Like, yeah, if Mothra loses. But Monster Zero straight up fires off the three beams, incinerates and fucking obliterates poor Mothra, my second favorite monster out of all these monsters. Not just this movie, all of them. And then that little bit of life goes over Godzilla and keeps him alive for that little bit longer. But you pointed out that there was like a red energy to that.
So towards the end, Mothra was glowing red, and they had been building up to this point that with the nuclear bomb they set off, Godzilla was now supercharged. So Godzilla was going to blow. So Mothra was glowing red, gets disintegrated, puts his sleep powder or whatever all over Godzilla, and then Godzilla starts glowing red. And we get that red Godzilla that I hear has been in another movie that I've never seen firsthand, but seen hints of.
Yeah, it's kind of like he's also in the second part of that Netflix Godzilla trilogy. He's shown up in that Godzilla vs. Destroya, where he's essentially melting from the inside, but he's also incredibly strong, and they both end up dying. But in this one, Godzilla doesn't die. Like, he just is super strong and then cools down, I guess. I did think he was going to self-destruct, though.
Yeah.
Kind of like in the other movies. But in the Netflix one, he doesn't. He also cools down. And that ends up being like a defense mechanism in that lore, because he uses the same thing against the third part of Monster Zero. But King Ghidorah in that just says, nah, bitch, I'm just going to make you disappear. It's kind of weird because it's like his last ditch thing of like when the Godzilla is afraid, it just does that meltdown thing. But I'm not going to talk about the Netflix movie. It's just so good. I love that trilogy. But in this, that's what ends up being what overpowers Monster Zero. How do you stop something that regenerates? You melt everything around it.
Of course. We do get some moments within that, right, where the humans are still trying to save the world. So they take the orca, they're leading Monster Zero away. They go and they find the little girl who, went and stopped all the monsters from destroying the world by broadcasting the orca through Red Sox Stadium.
Yeah.
Whatever. Got Monster Zero to come over there. Other humans showed up. Anyway, they find the little girl. It's the mom and the dad and the little girl. And, they're all going to lead Monster Zero away by taking the orca. But the mom realizes Monster Zero is just going to kill them all, right? So she waits for them to take off, gets in the car, drives away, leading Monster Zero through this whole thing while Godzilla is recovering. Of course, dies, but that's what has to happen with her, right? She did this to the world. She's just going to spend her life in jail anyway for essentially destroying millions of people by awakening all these monsters. And her last moment has to be, long live the king. And then that's when Godzilla shows up again.
See, when she said that, I was hoping King Kong would fucking show up.
You wanted King Kong. You said so many times he was going to show up in this movie.
God, I wanted him.
How many times did I tell you he wasn't?
Wouldn't that have been cool? Like a fucking tree trunk hits goddamn King Ghidorah in the fucking face.
Oh my God. But I knew it wasn't going to happen. He wasn't going to show up. And he didn't.
She said, long live the king. I'm like, oh, King Kong.
King of the monsters. Godzilla.
No, that's King Kong.
King of the... Okay.
You're going to see King Kong whoop some ass next year.
Yeah, calm down. So...
Her death also was a reflection of Mothra as well, sacrificing herself.
Right.
I don't know. It was kind of neat. Like, I thought that was a little...
It was pretty cool. So, yes, Godzilla melts down King Ghidorah, eats his head, fire blasts him. Yep. Destroyed, gone. There is no piece of King Ghidorah to regenerate. He's gone.
And all the fucking monsters then gather around Godzilla to kind of show, okay, he's the king, he's the alpha of this earth. And fucking Rodan's ass, like there's too much personality, I think, with these monsters sometimes in some parts.
Yeah.
And in that case, Rodan being like, I'm sorry. It's like, you were fighting my woman. And she died because of you, and you were betraying my ass.
Not his woman, his friend.
Godzilla should have killed Rodan and made an example of him in front of these other fucking monsters.
In front of a Motunui.
Yeah, these non-Toho.
A mammoth and a spider.
Warner Brothers is like, do you have the money to pay for these fucking monsters? Because we just made some up, because that's way cheaper.
Hell yeah, they did. Yeah, we got like rando.
Well, people pointed out that in the art book for the movie, there was like Gigan.
Of course there was.
And they didn't use them.
They mentioned 17 monsters. I saw 4. Maybe 6.
Basically, yeah.
7.
So there was Mothra,
I saw
King Ghidorah.
7 monsters.
Godzilla.
Yeah.
Rodan.
Mammoth.
The mammoth made up thing. The spider thing.
And Motunui.
The Muto was on there.
Yeah, Motunui.
King Kong, we're only up to 8.
We only saw the back of his head.
So what? It's still one.
Okay.
And I like that they reused the Muto. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I get that they're reusing the model, and it's like, fuck it. Like, we made him up too. Why not? Throw him in there. But I thought they were gone from the first one.
Yeah, I thought so too. Whatever.
I wanted to see King Caesar because their Facebook hinted at that. We didn't get that.
Caesar.
And there's no way he could have been that expensive. Not as expensive like Destroya or Gigan.
Right.
But whatever. We didn't get that. It's fine. We got the big ones, which were Mothra, King Ghidorah, Godzilla, of course, Rodan. Pretty neat to just see all of these monsters fight. And the story gave us that.
And then, of course, the very last moments of the movie are a newsreel, a internet newsreel of what's happened afterwards. So all the monsters are listening to Godzilla. He's keeping them in line. Eventually, they move to Skull Island, where they all live underneath the island in creepy catacombs.
Well, I think they were saying that their origin is found to have possibly been on Skull Island.
Oh, okay. And anyway, then the Sahara Desert is now a thriving rainforest because of, exactly like she planned, all the nuclear activity is growing all these plants, and the world is coming to a better place.
And that's when they also say that there's another egg of another Mothra egg. So we're going to see Mothra in the next one as well. We get hints of We get that scene of King Kong walking around, which I'm pretty sure was just footage
Probably.
from Skull Island, but that's fine. It's setting up the sequel for next year. But then at the very end of the credits and the finale, you get that same.
What did you think was at the end of the credits though? Can we? What was it?
What did I say originally?
What was it going to be? You said it was going to be King Kong.
Like straight up, but we got that earlier instead.
And you also said it was going to be his King Kong roar. And what did I say? I said, nah, Dan. Anyway.
But you did not say it was going to be Ra's al Ghul coming across that severed head of King Ghidorah from that ocean.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that the head wasn't able to regenerate and create another Monster Zero. That would have sucked. But instead, he says, we'll take it. So I'm guessing it's going to be Mecha Ghidorah.
It's got to be Mecha Ghidorah.
They can't recreate it exactly like the natural one. So it's going to be an amalgam of human technology as well as this DNA, this monster DNA. So it'll either be Mecha Ghidorah or somehow Destroya.
I did like that they also set up in the movie too. We didn't really touch on it because it didn't really lend itself to the movie until the end, where this group, they wanted to make the Earth whole again, right? But they were also dealing in selling the DNA, or he was going around collecting the DNA from these monsters. So that made sense of why he was going there and looking for that too.
I think that basically spells out that next year, when Godzilla and King Kong do inevitably fight, that they will probably team up, like
Hopefully.
in BVS, to fight a bigger threat. Possibly Doomsday. Zach did say that real Doomsday was somewhere out there in space, that this was just a clone, a type of different creature. So, no, it'll be probably Mecha Ghidorah or Destroya or someone.
Or Mecha Godzilla. Like maybe the humans are, maybe the government makes Mecha Godzilla, right, to fight this threat, and then surprise bitches, here's Mega Ghidorah. Because now we have this mecha technology.
I think that acting itself from the best actors were the monsters. They were phenomenal. Humans, they just did what they could based on this fucking script. Like there's a whole fortune cookie joke that was thrown in here, which was super weak.
Yes.
It was terrible, cringeworthy, the worst moment of the movie.
A fortune cookie.
A very long fortune cookie. It's like,
really?
what are you guys fucking doing?
You thought that point was worse than like, here, watch this video of them mating. Hopefully we blurred out the dinky bits.
That was dumb too.
That was horrible.
And people were saying that this was MCU type humor, and it was terrible, but it wasn't that level. And it wasn't even as often either. So people were kind of exaggerating about that. So let's relax on that. It was more humorous than Godzilla 14. The writing on the lines and it was not great. But it was all just to set up these monster fights, which were epic, which were amazing, which I think takes us straight into the special effects.
It was beautiful. It really was. The moments that we got with the monster, even the destruction, right? There was never a point where I was watching it, I was like, oh, that looks like a green screen, or that doesn't look like, it would really be the way that it looks, especially with all these monsters going around and destroying things and doing what they do. Do I wish we had gotten more of that? Yes. I wish it was an entire movie of just monsters fighting and destroying things. Don't give me all these humans, except for Watanabe being cool and like making friends with Godzilla.
The worst parts that I noticed on the first viewing were sometimes when the monsters were really well lit, they didn't look real, if that made any sense. Like it looked too CG, and that made me understand. People kept complaining, why is it so dark? Why do they have rain all the time? Why do they have these clouds and the fogs and hiding the monsters?
You got to.
Because they don't look right when they're completely lit up. They simply don't. And you get some of those scenes in this, and if you pay attention, you're like, that doesn't, the scale and texture, all that, it just doesn't look real. So that's why in these moments where they are fighting at night or in the rain, they look fucking amazing. And I think one of my favorite shots is still when we get that, I don't know if it was Brazil or where the throne was, but when Ghidorah has essentially become the alpha of the world, spreads its wings, very demonic type of like imagery. And then you see like the Christian cross in the foreground. It's an amazing shot. And there's a lot of those moments in here where these monsters are, Godzilla's firing off a blast into the air. You're getting the shot of him in the pyramid healing up. You're getting Mothra waking up. There's so many iconic scenes that you can screenshot and forever like admire. They really nailed that imagery.
And they showed in the preview, right? But when Mothra first hatches and her wings go out, right? And it's just glowing underneath all that water, and it's just so relaxing and beautiful.
I know humans were like or smiling at her. I still wanted her to like attack them. It's like, you don't know she's good. Like, what are you guys talking about? Right. Like, you're all happy to see her, and she just fucking starts destroying shit. She almost did when she was a larvae.
Yep.
She went after the fucking humans up until the call went off. So I'm like, she's not exactly good. She just went off to save Godzilla, so she could have just started wrecking shit.
I thought even like their airplanes looked okay too, which they had an endless supply of airplanes
and drones.
Just so many. And I was like, your airplane probably should be beat up, but you've been in the same airplane for the whole thing, and I guess it's okay. So
it's got the same shit that fucking dad has. Same DNA. Just can get thrown around all the time and just get up and run around again.
Overall, I thought the monsters were the best part, right? That's what we went there for, and they looked fantastic.
It's like being a kid again. You got through the human parts to get to the monster shit, but it's like the movie we wanted as kids.
Right.
Because a lot of people, I forgot who it was, a coworker or someone, might have been you, but that said that when you remember these movies, you remember the monster bits and not the human portion. So you as an adult think, oh, those were just monster fight movies. It's like, no, they were mostly human interactions, but you just happen to remember the monster stuff. So this is that movie we wanted as kids where they give us a shit ton of monster fights. They look incredible with the special effects. You get a lot of great moments. The fighting with the atomic blasts and the breath, and then Mothra having new weapons to her fucking arsenal. Rodan looking prehistoric and dinosaur-like and waking up and wrecking a whole fucking town by just flying by it. And he also fights King Ghidorah, so everyone fights everyone. This is what you want.
I did also like the bits where they threw in, like, they had cave drawings, right? And they were talking, like, people have lived alongside of these monsters before. It's been millennia, right? But we do have ancient cave drawings. We do have ancient writings of people living alongside of these monsters and the destruction that they caused even back then.
I know one of the plans, had this been huge, were in the MonsterVerse universe, one of the expanded movies was going to be a prequel to that prehistoric time.
That would have
been
and
how
so
these
cool.
Humans lived with the giant monsters.
Maybe you would have learned how Monster Zero ended up in the ice.
That's what I'm thinking too. Like, that could have been a way for them to explain how everyone went dormant.
It's the same way that Aang ended up in ice, I bet. He just went to Avatar State. Oh. I don't know. He got stuck in a big storm and went to Avatar State.
So all the monsters went to Avatar State.
Yeah, that was it.
I'd take it too. Like, any explanation, really.
But I don't think it needed an Anyway, move on. What are your overall thoughts of this movie?
I do also got to compliment the fact that you spoiled the name for Monster Zero, because you're like, oh, you said it fucking months ago.
Yeah.
Frozen, Monster Zero, 0 degrees. That's how. It's like, holy shit, that's how they fucking did it. And
Why
that's exactly
don't
what
you
it
trust
is.
me on these things?
Well, I did many months
you
back.
Should.
I'm like, yeah, you're right. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
That's going to happen. That's going to happen.
You should have known that King Kong wouldn't be in it at the end of the credits.
He was, though. He was on during the credits, not at the end.
Yeah, but he wasn't like making his King Kong noise. Like, do you remember when I spoiled the King Kong movie and I'm like, at the very end, it's going to be Godzilla roar? And you're like, nah.
I remember.
Done.
You're right.
I'm brilliant.
Oh, I think Godzilla, as a summary, Godzilla 14 is a better movie. It's not my favorite Godzilla movie, though. And I think that the Netflix one is still my King of the Monster movies. That trilogy is so amazing. But this is satisfying as hell. You get the monster fights. You get great moments in this. And some of it is kind of weird, like I said, with the Rodan bit or the weird lines from the actors every now and again. But it is there for that imagery. It is there for the fights between the monsters. King Ghidorah was fucking scary. You are threatened by these monsters as you watch them fight each other, even though you know that King Ghidorah is going to get defeated, but you're like, damn, some of this is kind of hopeless at times. And then the expanded relationship that these monsters have to one another is great. They explain why Godzilla's fighting these other monsters after the movie ends. Like, oh, he's keeping everyone in check. He's that natural balance. Now the Earth is in balance. Or Mothra and Godzilla had that friend, that symbiotic relationship, as they said, and they expanded on that a little bit more. So each of these monsters is kind of given a subtle personality, or at least they function to each other, why they're teaming up, why they're fighting someone. Exactly. it's all there. And I think that if you are a Godzilla fan at all, it's got to be a must see. Absolutely. They nailed every aspect of the monster fighting.
I agree with that. The one thing I would have seen, like I said, I wanted to see more monster fighting. And I think part of what skewed that for me is the reviews that came out that said there's too much monster and not enough human.
They exaggerated.
So they exaggerated so much. It's like 75% human and like 25% monster fighting. So I was so ready for like 3 hours of monster fights. I'm like, yeah, a little bit of human. And then halfway through the movie, I'm like, well, we're still on the humans. Like, where's the monster fighting, right? But the moments that we got of monster fighting were so good and they looked so good and they had you on the edge of your seat, right? Like at the end of the day, you know Godzilla's going to win, but what's going to happen right now? And so exactly like you said, they really nailed those pieces.
I think the reason why they exaggerated, aside from wanting it to fail, is that they sprinkled in the fights throughout the movie.
Right.
It wasn't like one block of monster fighting. If you add all those moments together, it's not that much, but because they gave it to us in sections throughout it, I think that's why these critics, I guess, might have thought, oh, there's a lot in here. There really isn't.
Right.
There's like a short scene here, a short scene here, a short scene here, and kind of an okay longish scene at the very end.
And most of it was broken up with humans doing shit.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, this is probably about the same type of monster fighting that more than Godzilla 2014, I'd say.
Right.
But about the same as like a traditional Godzilla film.
Yeah, probably.
So based on the box office, a pretty good chance that you probably haven't seen it yet. But if you at all care about the Godzilla movies or grew up on them, this is one that you definitely want to check out.
If you did see the Godzilla movie, if you're bigger fans than we are, and there were some Easter eggs that we missed, maybe some nods to previous Godzilla movies, we would love to hear about them. Of course, reach out to us on Twitter at ReasonsI'mBroke, at Kelli.
And that will do it for our regular portion of the news and reviews of the podcast. Here's where we head into the Brocat block, which is the more personal side of where Kelli and I have been.
I mentioned last week that I had 20 minutes left in Lucifer. I finished those 20 minutes. You're welcome. I also found out that it's been on the top of the binge list for Netflix since it showed up on Netflix. So I don't even know why it hasn't renewed, but 6% of binges on Netflix have been Lucifer since it aired.
Are all the seasons on here too? Or is it just the new season?
All of them.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good for the show. I know they haven't announced a new season yet, and there's all that hope. People are saying, like, I know one of the producers, he was on Word Balloon, and he said that fans campaigning for it is what's going to help it a lot.
Of course.
And that the viewership on the episode itself, Netflix looks at the percentage of the episodes that are completed or the season that's completed, and that's how they decide. If they go, oh, most people only saw the first 3 episodes, so we're probably not going to renew it, as opposed to like if they have a higher percentage of people that went through all of them.
They look for 70%.
Gotcha.
So for this particular season, it would be 7 episodes.
Okay. All right. So without spoiling, does it end on a cliffhanger or could it end on season 3?
You mean season 4? It could end like it's a shitty ending if it does. So shitty. It could end that way because there's some sense of closure, but you're not happy for any of the characters, right? It just kind of ends and you're like, well, this isn't the best solution. It's like a choose your own adventure game and you pick the one that isn't really the happy ending, but it's an ending. So that's kind of where it is. There's the actors and what I've seen from Tom Ellison, who plays Lucifer, and his Twitter, the cast really feel like it's a cliffhanger. They really feel like there's so much more. I mean, of course they
have
do,
to say
right?
That, yeah.
But they feel like there's more story to be told. And from my understanding, there's more story that's written. And they're just waiting for that go-ahead to film it and to continue on. And there's, as always, there's so much more that they can do with these characters and with this world that they've built.
Well, for your enjoyment of Lucifer up to this point, I hope they do renew it for a 5th season, especially now that it's on Netflix and you can kind of check it out once it releases. Another show that we got to watch is episode 1 of DC Universe's Swamp Thing. And this is, obviously, we covered it before where they cut the season down by, I believe, 2 or 3 episodes. And there's word about it being a tax thing where they had to wrap up by a certain amount of time so that they can save money, or there's a thing about the future of DC. There's all kinds of weird explanations, but I guess we'll see how they wrap up this final episode. But so far, we've got one episode as of this recording up on DC Universe. We're not going to go too deep on it at all, but just kind of very preliminary impressions of how they're setting up this show so far. To me, the lead of Alec Holland, he wasn't a likable character.
You didn't like him?
I thought he was going to be the Asian guy's boyfriend, just a side character.
No.
I did not see him as a lead.
I really liked him.
And by the time he turns into Swamp Thing, I'm like, all right, great. Hopefully this is the only episode we see him in. Hopefully he's just in makeup for the rest of the show.
I liked him.
What did you find? I didn't relate to the guy. I know they set up this failed scientist type of thing, or this fraud story, but I just did not like the take that he had on Alec Holland.
I don't know. I thought it was okay. And maybe it's because you've read the comic more, right? So you already have in your mind what Alec Holland should be like. I only read that one book, and he wasn't really in it. Like, everything I've read, he's already Swamp Thing. Mm-hmm. So, really, at the end of the day, they're probably looking at how he acts as Swamp Thing, because he's not going to pop out as Swamp Thing and be like, woohoo, like, biology.
Here's my sandals.
Here it is. But I liked what they did with the character. I think what they were really trying to do is get him to relate to Abby Arcane. And get them to kind of have similar experiences. I did think it was pretty cool that he was hired, right, to start researching the swamp. And then clearly the villain, sorry, we're going way into it. Anyway, clearly the villain was like, I fired you 2 weeks ago. But he's still so passionate and so driven that he's still looking into these things.
Do you think it's too obvious that he's the villain? Do you think it'll be someone else?
No, it's definitely him.
You think it's that weak of writing?
It might be the wife, actually.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
That would make a lot of sense. But there was definitely a man that... Anyway, I'm sorry. We'll talk about this after because we can't go to... Watch it. If you like Swamp Thing, watch it. If you're enjoying the DC Universe shows, I think you should watch it. Don't watch it with your kids.
No, it's definitely there's some strong imagery here. It's a horror story.
Yeah.
You get corpses coming alive. Even though they're plant-ish creatures, it's really a live plant and a live vine. It's coming alive through a corpse that is a severed head and a torso and like arms and all this. It does get heavy on that. And I got to say, the special effects for it being Swamp Thing are amazing.
Yeah.
And the little bit that we saw of Swamp Thing in that practical effect, that was really cool. Like, it looks like it's straight out of the comic book. He's not as large, but it fits this particular show. They're
using a lot of practical effects too, which I really enjoyed because, we're always fans of practical effects over CG when possible.
You notice they also brought down the saturation of the show overall. So it does have like that sort of noir horror feel as you're watching it, which wouldn't have fit if they made it super colorful.
Right.
You don't want this to be like a CW type Flash or Supergirl show. It's more, not quite Netflix level, but they are very conscious about the way they use, much like Riverdale, the colors and the different tones to fit this particular story, which is a darker one, which isn't one that they're going to be cracking jokes or there's not going to be happy endings for a lot of people.
Not going to be fortune cookie jokes.
Thank God.
So overall, it sounds like we both really enjoyed the first episode. Watch it if you can. We'll definitely be continuing on, at least with the second.
And capping off today's episode, I do want to thank everyone, especially Innsmouth_Tide. And I actually want to know what he thought more about Swamp Thing as well as he continues to watch these episodes. But he chimed in first on our Discord by saying that he did not notice a change from our old recording closet to now a recording room.
Right.
And I think that's great. If you did not notice a change, that's awesome. I think that meant that we did as much as possible to keep that, what I think is about that standard quality that I'm satisfied with for the podcast. So it's great to hear that a lot of you enjoyed the longer episode. Because of that, we're more comfortable recording and are more willing to expand even deeper on new stories and on the podcast, which of course means more content for you. So massive thanks to Innsmouth for that feedback, to Manu from the Film Exiles, to Millennial Mike from the Film Exiles as well, to all the brokettes that compliment and give us feedback on the show every single week. All of that is fuel for Palpa, Kelli, and I to keep going every week, every month, every year since 2012.
It's the nuclear bomb to our Godzillas.
That's right. That's right. So thank you all so much for tuning in again this week. I am Last Daniel.
And I am Emperor Palpacali.
And Brocat Core.
All will be well.